Bernard Giles was a serial killer who terrorized the city of Jacksonville, Florida, in the 1970s. His crimes were marked by brutality and senselessness, leaving a trail of devastation and grief in his wake. Giles's early life is not well documented, but it is known that he grew up in a troubled home and had a history of behavioral problems. He was born in 1950 and spent much of his childhood moving from one place to another, never quite finding stability or security. As Giles entered adulthood, his behavior became increasingly erratic and violent. He was known to have a short temper and would often lash out at those around him. Despite these warning signs, Giles was able to evade detection and continue his downward spiral into darkness. The first of Giles' known victims was a young woman named Carla Denise Maxwell. Maxwell was a 20-year-old college student who was abducted from her apartment complex in February 1973. Her body was later found in a wooded area, and an autopsy revealed that she had been raped and murdered. Over the next several months, Giles claimed 4 more victims, each of whom was young, female, and had long hair. The victims were Vicki Lynn Harrell, 19, who was abducted from her home in May 1973, Rebecca Ann Dowski, 21, who was abducted from a shopping center in June 1973, Pamela Darlene Mack, 19, who was abducted from her apartment complex in August 1973, Colleen Marie McNamee, 19, who was abducted from a parking lot in September 1973. Each of the victims was subjected to extreme violence, including rape, torture, and murder. Giles's methods were brutal and calculating, and he seemed to take great pleasure in the suffering of his victims. The investigation into Giles's crimes was extensive, police gathering evidence from multiple crime scenes and interviewing numerous witnesses. However, it wasn't until a surviving victim came forward that the police were able to identify Giles as the prime suspect. In December 1973, Giles was arrested and charged with the murders of the 5 young women. His trial was highly publicized, with many in the community calling for justice for the victims and their families. Giles was ultimately convicted of the murders and sentenced to life in prison. He died in prison in 1998, bringing an end to a reign of terror that had haunted the city of Jacksonville for years. The case of Bernard Giles serves as a reminder of the importance of community vigilance and the need for law enforcement to work tirelessly to bring justice to victims of violent crime. It also highlights the devastating consequences of serial violence and the need for continued efforts to prevent such tragedies from occurring in the future.